Hello and welcome. This is L24 Midnight News coming to you live from the capital Algiers, and these are tonight's top stories. As the Transitional Military Council in Burkina Faso announces the thwarting of a coup attempt and the arrest of officers involved in it, UN Security Council holds a briefing on the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Polisario describes the statement of the Moroccan occupation as insulting to the organization and its founding principles. And Geneva Group for Support and Protection of Human Rights in Western Sahara praises the report of United Nations Group on arbitrary detention regarding the case of the Sahrawi activist Sultana Khaya. In Armenia, Azerbaijan, Karabakh dispute, the separatists announced the dissolution of their republic. Yerevan accuses Baku of ethnic purging of Karabakh Armenians. As NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says that the end of the war depends on doubling Ukraine's power, Vladimir Putin describes the referendum on joining the 4 Ukrainian regions as an important event that paves the way for their full accession to Russia. Hello again and welcome. Starting from the African continent, Burkina Faso military leaders announced that they successfully thwarted a coup attempt allegedly planned on Tuesday. Security forces and intelligence services intervened to prevent this attempt, initiated by unnamed officers who had intentions to destabilize the country by attacking republican institutions, according to an official statement. The country leaders didn't identify those involved, but confirmed some arrests with ongoing searches for others. United Nations said more than 3,300 peacekeeping personnel serving in Mali have left the country as part of the gradual UN withdrawal plan. The gradual reduction of MINUSMA personnel is in accordance with the UN Security Council resolution, which was passed on June of this year. The resolution requires the complete withdrawal of MINUSMA's operations by December 31, 2023. Still with the UN Security Council, held an open briefing followed by close consultations on developments in the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The special representative of the Secretary General and the head of the United Nations mission in Democratic Republic of Congo, Benito Keita, said during her periodic briefing to the Council that insecurity continues in eastern Congo due to the confrontation taking place in the region between the army and the militants of the M23 rebellion, warning of increased tension between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. A new course of irrigation for benefit of African nations will be organized in Algeria. In the state of the Mdia, starting from next Sunday, stated the Secretary General of the Arab Fund for Technological Aid to African Countries, Ambassador Mohamed Saleh.
This evening at the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, the closing ceremony of the training course for African diplomats who work in their embassies here in Algeria was held. This training course is the first of its kind organized by the League of Arab States, represented by Arab Fund for African States in Algeria. Next Sunday, the League of Arab States, also represented by Arab Fund for Africa States, will organize a training course for African engineers in the field of irrigation and agriculture in the city of Mdia.
In Algeria, still, that has seen a significant rise in foreign tourists in 2023. According to Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdulrahman, he reported over 1.6 million foreign tourists visiting the country, exceeding the previous year's figures by more than 1 million. These numbers reflect Algeria's efforts to establish itself as a sought-after tourist destination through various measures and its unique attractions.
Tourism in Algeria is witnessing a qualitative shift that must be promoted. The number of foreign tourists who visited Algeria during this year exceeded 1.6 million tourists, an increase of nearly 1 million tourists over the year 2022.
To a different matter now, in a press release, the representative of Polisario Front in the United Nations, Sidi Mohammed Omar, described the statement delivered by the representative of the occupying state of Morocco that United Nations before the 78th session of the UN General Assembly as discordant voice and an affront to everything that the UN stands for. This comes with the lining up of countries from Africa and Latin America to support the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination during the 78th session of the UN General Assembly. The Geneva Group to support the protection and promotion of human rights in Western Sahara uploaded the working group's conclusion, which addressed the case of Sahrawi activist Sultana Khaya and her sister Laura Khaya in its report to the UN Human Rights Council. The Geneva Group of a Human Rights Organization urged the Human Rights Council to follow up on this matter, particularly by requiring the occupying army in Western Sahara to quickly put the working group on arbitrary detentions recommendations into practice. The organization urged the UN to set up its efforts and closely watch for human rights abuses in Western Sahara. The National Human Rights Commission in Libya submitted its report to the Attorney General and the Presidential Council following a series of field visits to the areas affected by the floods that swept the eastern region of the country, which comprised a call to unify institutions to accelerate relief efforts and facilitate the arrival of humanitarian aid.
The committee recommends that the Presidential Council expedite the foundation of Supreme Crisis, an emergency committee, headed by it, and with the membership of all services, including medical and relief ones as well as other humanitarian sectors, whose tasks are focused on managing the crisis, ensuring unified efforts, and ensuring that aid and humanitarian aid reach those who merit it. The reports monitored the extent of damage to health, medical service, educational and cultural facilities, infrastructure, and private property of citizens, as well as an assessment of the humanitarian conditions of those affected and the affected areas, and the size and shape of emergency humanitarian relief and medical needs.
To the Middle East now, the Zionist occupation forces launched an arrest campaign in various parts of the West Bank under the pretext of searching for people wanted by its security services, while settlers performed Talmudic prayers in the courtyards of Al-Aqsa Mosque before the withdrawal. Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani ordered the imposition of maximum legal penalties on individuals found careless in the Hamdaniya fire incident. During a meeting, he emphasized the need to continue safety inspections of public buildings, event halls, restaurants, and hotels, holding administrative unit directors responsible for safety. Strict legal penalties are to be applied to those responsible for Hamdaniya fire in Nineveh Governorate. Now in Europe, Armenia separatists in the Nagorno-Karabakh region announced the dissolution of the self-declared Republic of Artsakh as the U.S. citizens' Russia's role in the conflict.
Efforts to stabilize the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh are gaining pace. Armenian separatists have surprisingly declared the dissolution of the Republic of Artsakh and the dismantling of its institutions, effective from the start of 2024. This decision came through a decree signed by the separatist leader of the Karabakh region, calling upon residents, both local and abroad, to consider integration into Azerbaijan.
When the gunfire began, my 12-year-old grandchild rushed to our neighbor's basement in terror. He kept screaming, desperate to know if our family and friends were safe. We were too afraid to step outside even for water as the gunfire raged. Debris from the explosions scattered across our yard. We remained confined to the basements, unable to prepare food or leave.
Meanwhile, the United States has expressed disappointment with Russia's role in the recent negotiations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller, in a press conference, welcomed Azerbaijan's acceptance of international monitoring mission. The U.S. intends to collaborate with allies and partners to launch this mission following Azerbaijan's recent takeover of Nagorno-Karabakh.
I certainly do not think Russia has played a productive role here in the past week. We have seen them at times. There have been times where they facilitated negotiations, and that was something that we welcomed. But certainly in the last week, their role has not been productive in this situation.
This development occurs in the midst of ongoing displacement of thousands of Armenians. Satellite images reveal a significant buildup of vehicles on the road connecting Azerbaijan and Armenia. Recent clashes in Karabakh resulted in 213 Armenian separatists losing their lives, while Baku reported the death of 192 soldiers and one civilian during its swift military operation last week.
Russia will celebrate the date of its annexation of several Ukrainian territories as a reunification day. This comes as Ukraine president has received NATO chief in Kiev, who promised more support to Ukraine.
The stage has been set on Moscow's Red Square. It's time to mark for the first time the incorporation of 4 Ukrainian regions into Russia. The day, now known as Reunification Day, has become historic in Russia. It will be celebrated from now on every year to mark the annexation of the 4 regions.
For the first time, now, under Russian law, elections were held. As I have already said many times, in fact, our historic regions of Donbass and Novorossiya were following a vote in the regional parliaments, whose members were also elected for the first time under Russian law. The incumbent heads of the constituent entities of the federation confirmed their powers. This is, of course, a significant event, an important step towards the full entry of the new regions into the single legal state space of our big country.
In Kiev, meanwhile, these Ukrainian brigades are training to try to turn things around. They will be sent to the south and the east of Ukraine, where fierce fighting is taking place. But Ukraine won't be alone in this conflict. NATO will be by its side.
Today, I can confirm that NATO now has framework contracts in place for 2.4 billion euros worth of key ammunition, including 1 billion euros of firm orders. This covers capabilities like 155mm artillery, anti-tank guided missiles, and main battle tank ammunition.
At the same time, Moscow announces a 70% increase in its defense spending, a signal that Russia isn't ready to give up its special military operation in Ukraine.
A disagreement between Germany and Italy frustrated the highly anticipated deal on the long-delayed European Union's migration reform. More in this report.
Ahead of key EU Parliament elections, Rome and Berlin did not reach consensus on the last piece of the European Union's migration reform. The dispute centered on the humanitarian aid and the search and rescue services provided by NGO vessels in the Mediterranean Sea. Italy considered these vessels to be a pull factor that attracts a larger number of asylum seekers, while Germany contests this characterization and says the boats are crucial for saving lives at sea.
As for non-governmental organizations, nobody is waging a war against non-governmental organizations. We only say, however, that they cannot be, as Frontex said, a sort of magnet to attract irregular migrants who then, let's say, are always brought to Italy, because Italy is the nearest country that has safe ports.
We will also continue to negotiate the crisis regulation today. We are still negotiating on the question of individual conditions, so I cannot tell you anything about that yet. But I'm confident that we will hopefully reach a good result in the end. And in this respect, we are now in exchange with the Spanish presidency.
Despite multiple statements from EU migration ministers that suggested positive outcome was within reach, no full announcement of an agreement was made, awaiting a formal decision in the coming days.
I'm sure that in a few days we will also have the formal decision on the general post on the crisis proposal, and that is very much welcome.
The influx of migrants from Africa and the Middle East to Europe and Southern Europe is a permanent theme in the old continent. But despite the slow progress, the 27-member bloc seem to be close to finalizing a deal.
Chinese President Xi Jinping called on the nation to boost confidence and strive in unity in the relentless endeavor toward building a strong China and realizing national transformation. At the grand reception held in Beijing to celebrate the 74th anniversary of founding of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese president conveyed high regard and warm greetings to people from all walks of life across the nation and honest appreciation to friendly countries and international friends supporting China's modernization drive.
On behalf of the Central Committee and the State Council, I would like to pay high tribute to Chinese people of all ethnic groups, members of the People's Liberation Army and the People's Armed Police Force, and other political parties and public figures without party affiliation. I would like to extend sincere greetings to compatriots in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, the Macau Special Administrative Region and Taiwan, and overseas Chinese. I would also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to friendly countries and foreign friends who care about and support China's modernization drive.
China said Thursday it had offered humanitarian assistance in the recent release of U.S. soldiers from North Korea. China's foreign ministry said on Thursday that Pyongyang and Washington requested that China provide necessary assistance in the spirit of humanitarianism regarding the U.S. soldier who had been held in North Korea since July when he crossed over the demilitarized zone from South Korea.
Upon the request from Democratic People's Republic of Korea side and the United States side, China provided necessary assistance out of humanitarian consideration.
Reports from North Korea suggest that Pyongyang has adopted a constitutional amendment to preserve its policy on nuclear force. This comes as the country's leader Kim Jong pledged to accelerate production of nuclear weapons to deter what he called U.S. provocations. The amendment comes as a year after North Korea officially enshrined in law the right to use primitive nuclear strikes to protect itself. Now in U.S., Benedict thought Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and Tim Scott delivered sharp performances, though they did not damage the front-runner Donald Trump in the second Republican president debate of the year.
And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching.
The second Republican president debate featured personal and policy clashes between the candidates. plenty of fire directed at Democratic President Joe Biden and the chanting of former President Donald Trump, the front-runner who once again declined to join his rivals on stage.
Because Joe Biden hides in his basement and won't answer as to why he's raising the debt the way he's done. And Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer.
But as the debate ended, commentators were divided over who had the strongest performance. But the majority agreed that no candidate appeared to have secured the sort of breakout moment that would alter the dynamics of a primary contest that Trump has dominated for months, despite his 4 criminal indictments. With Trump absent, the remaining major candidates spent much of the rest of the night largely espousing the same conservative positions on a host of issues, criticizing the Biden administration, and stepped up their attacks against Donald Trump, blasting him for not showing up.
And where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you to defend his record.
Despite the fact that the discussion lacked a clear turning point, commentators commended Tim Scott, a senator from South Carolina, and Nikki Haley, a former governor of that state, for their frank exchanges. While Governor Ron DeSantis, who has consistently finished second in surveys, seemed to hold his own. It is improbable that he will overtake Trump, as analysts agreed that Donald is the one who won last night's debate.
Dutch police said a gunman killed a teacher and a local woman after opening fire in classroom at a university hospital campus in Rotterdam and nearby house on Thursday. The 32-year-old suspect, a university student, fatally shot a 39-year-old woman living in his neighborhood and seriously injured her 14-year-old daughter, police said in a televised conference. After setting the woman's house on fire, the gunman went to the Rotterdam Medical Center University Hospital, where he entered a classroom and fatally shot a 46-year-old teacher. The man was arrested near the hospital, where he also set a fire. His motive was unknown.
The gunman shot at a 39-year-old woman at a house on Heiman Dollardplein. She died as a result. Her 14-year-old daughter was also seriously injured. She is currently being treated in hospital. He then started a fire in the house.
Vervolgens heeft hij brand gesticht in de woning.
In economy and energy, oil prices experienced an early rise in Asian trading on Thursday, following the surge in the previous session to reach the highest level in 2023. These increases comes amid heightened concerns about the global supply shortages, particularly due to the significant drop in U.S. crude inventories. Brent crude futures neared the 97 mark, reaching 96.71, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures climbed to $93.88. In sport, the UN Commission has denounced France's ban on hijab-wearing athletes competing in Summer Olympics next year. When asked about the decision to prohibit French athletes from wearing the hijab at the Games in Paris, a representative for the United Nations Human Rights Office said no one should impose on women what she needs to wear or not wear. According to international human rights standards, restrictions of expressions of religious or beliefs such as attire choices are only acceptable under really specific circumstances that address legitimate concerns for public safety, public order, or public health. Thousands of Muslims gathered in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Al-Quds to celebrate Al-Mawlid Nabawi Sharif. Celebration included the distribution of sweets for those taking part, young children dressing up in traditional clothing and carried baskets of sweets which they distributed to passerby in an effort to spread the joy and learn about the importance of kindness to others.
Thank God, this is a joy that I am attending this for the first time in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Our people are in need of joy, in need to express the joy, especially in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. There is a lot of frustration, a lot of trouble and deprivation. Not everyone today has the chance to come and pray at the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Peace be upon him, on our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us in this late hour. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself and good night.